1980 or 81. Yeah.
Wow. And
Uh-huh.
what were you playing any Gretsch drums at this point? Where had they entered your life at this point?
Actually, they did. Yeah.
I didn't know this. This is good.
Well, in about I think it was grade 11 or 12, um, Craig Reiner, who I mentioned earlier, my first teacher, he had a relationship with Manny's Music in New York. And we used to buy all of I guess the school board bought a lot of the gear for like the percussion department through Manny's in New York. And so we had a special arrangement with them. And through that arrangement, Craig was able to arrange for me to buy my own personal drums, which were Gretsch drums.
Woo!
And I was digging around in the basement yesterday trying to find the receipt from Manny's. No. And this was 1977. So I couldn't find it. I know it's somewhere, and I'll post it if I can find it, the original receipt. And the drums, it was a monster kit. It wasn't that monster. The bass drum was a 20 by 14, and there was a 12 and a 13 and a 16 and an 18-inch floor toms. I mean, it was a beautiful kit. And the drums that I'm playing now, the Gretsch drums that I have now, the only remaining drum that I play from that kit is the bass drum, and that's what I use primarily. It's been my bass drum for my whole career, pretty much.
That's insane.
Yeah, it's wild.
Oh man, I had no idea. That is amazing. So what happened? You went to Humber College.
Mm-hmm.
How long was the program then?
That was a 3-year program, and I didn't stay all 3 years. I did about 3 semesters, and I had a great experience at Humber College. My teacher there was Don Vickery, who, it's actually kind of an interesting story. My best friend is Bruce Vickery in Halifax. He's a singer and a musician, and he had a band called the Hopping Penguins for many, many years. And anyway, I got to Humber, and my teacher was Don Vickery, and I said to Donnie, my best friend's name is Bruce Vickery. Is that any relation? He goes, yeah, that's my nephew. And so Don had grown up in Halifax, or he came up in Halifax a little bit with his brothers, Tom and Don Vickery, and Don Vickery was Bruce's dad. So there was an immediate connection right there with Donnie, and he taught me at Humber, and Roger Flock was at Humber as well. And it was, it was then, and it still is a tremendous program. And
yeah,
there were musicians in my year and a half or so there that I still work with, these days. And yeah, it was an incredible experience at Humber. So after high school, I went to Humber. You have to audition before you go. They accept you, yep. And then you audition again, and they place you in different bands at the school. So it was a tremendous experience at Humber. And in my first year there, this is when I had the Randy Brecker experience. They had brought Randy Brecker in to do a workshop for the school, and they asked me if I would be in the rhythm section for the workshop.
Wow!
And I was just like, I was freaked out, like, because Randy Brecker, like the Brecker brothers, I'm a huge fan of the Brecker brothers' music, and so it was a real honor to be invited to play that day.
Yeah, they were hot.
Yeah, they were burning hot. They played on everything, and so to play with Randy Brecker, it was amazing. It was with the alumni, or not the alumni, it was with the teachers that were teaching there. And so, yeah, it was a real feather in my cap that day, for sure.
And you were still a young guy. You were not even 20 years old. Like 19.
I was 19. Yeah.
That's insane. So all this musical experience from when you were young, mm-hmm. and 19 years old, you had played with Randy Brecker. I still haven't played with Randy Brecker. But what an amazing time, to be a musician. And that says something about you, though, as a player and as a person, to be chosen to play that kind of gig. So you only did the 3 semesters there, and why is that?
Well, I just want to make a point before I go there. As I was coming up as a young person playing and stuff, like I really found my role as an accompanist. Like that was really a big thing for me. And because I'd played in choirs and youth groups and all different kinds of situations, I really enjoy the accompaniment part of that, and it's really satisfying. And so I think that does play into who I am as a musician. And so maybe that's part of why they chose me to do that day with Randy. I'm not sure, but I saw my role even that day as just an accompanist, get in there, do the job, and it worked out really well. So I did the 3 semesters there, and there, at one point there was a notice up or a phone call or something that there was auditions happening for the Long John Baldry gig. Now, Long John Baldry, some people may not know who that is. He was a blues, artist. He had a career in England for many years as sort of a crooner, and also, well, a blues artist and then a crooner, and then he sort of went back to the blues. And he had in his band in Bluesology, when he was a blues musician, had people like Rod Stewart and Elton John, he hadn't changed his name at that point yet. So Elton, or at least Long John, was somewhat of a big deal when he moved to Canada, and he had some success. And I can remember listening to Long John Baldry's records in Halifax before I, became a full-time professional musician. So the audition was announced, and so I got a call to come and audition for the gig, and I won the audition. I got the gig, and so from there, I quit school and went on the road as a traveling touring musician with John and his company.
Where did you go? Where did you travel?
It was all mostly in Canada, actually.
Yeah.
And funny enough, I'll tell this story about the Long John gig, because it was kind of my launch, in terms of a professional career, and tremendous experience. But one of the funny things that happened was, because there was a couple friends of mine from school that had auditioned and won the audition as well. Gary Bray, Gary plays piano. He works with Bryan Adams now. He's had a tremendous career. And Asher Horowitz was the guitar player. He was at Humber as well. And so all 3 of us went down and did the audition, won the gig. So now we're on the road. We're 19 or 20 years old. And our first gig is in Halifax, where I'm from. And so we play this big show club in Halifax called the Misty Moon. And which a lot of people will know that club from back in the day. Anyway, we had no experience of touring, really. So our first gig, we get to the gig, and we go backstage, and there's what we now know as what's the rider. So there's tons of beer, and there's like rum and, all this booze, essentially. And we're just fresh out of college. So we're like, and somebody said, oh, that's the rider. You guys, that's for you. You can have like the Heineken beers and all this business. And so we tried to drink it before the show, which was really
all of it.
All of it, yeah. Which was a huge mistake, obviously. And we learned a very, very valuable lesson that night. Celebrate after the show.
Oh, that's crazy.
Yeah, that was
good time.
Well.
So what did you learn from that gig, playing with him specifically? Was there any feedback that he would have given you?
Yes. Actually, the feedback came mostly from the bass player.
Okay.
And the bass player was a guy named George Ford. George was also from England. And George was a session musician in England, had moved to Canada. He played on things like Year of the Cat with Al Stewart. And he was friends with the Beatles, John Lennon. He was a little bit older than us. And the thing that I learned from George was the groove, play the groove. Don't overplay. He would lay it down. We just wanted, because we were young, we wanted to play every note ever written. And the lesson was really keep it simple and serve the tune, serve the music.
Yeah.
We were kind of absorbing all of these concepts as we were going along. There wasn't specific feedback, hey, play this way, play that way. It was more like us watching George just lay it down.
Yeah.
With no extraneous stuff. And so I learned a really valuable lesson in that.
That was really your approach, probably, anyway. Although, being young, and I remember being 19, 20 and playing some of my first gigs, and I played in a band with my brother, and he was like, oh, so that was Bad Moon Rising by Rush.
Yeah.
And he would, all kinds of things. But you're definitely known as a guy that lays it down and has real total commitment and great time and a great sound. And that's what served you for your, up until now. And who were some of your drum heroes back then?
Oh my God, Neil! I knew you were going to ask me this question.
Yeah.
There's so many influences for me. You know, as I was becoming a professional, learning repertoire and music, I was in a bunch of bands, you know, cover bands as well, and you know, learning different styles. Like early on, I think would be people like my mom and dad listened to a lot of the Benny Goodman and a lot of the big band stuff, and they were terrific dancers, my folks. And I think I may have picked up some of my rhythm from them. I got to pay tribute to my mom and dad for that. But like the Gene Krupa stuff, like and how that grooves like so deep, and then later on, you know, like even through high school and stuff, I was listening to jazz as well as rock and R&B and stuff. I liked I like guys like Ed Sof, great jazz drummer from the States, and the Peter Erskine stuff, and of course, I mean, there's so many. I have so many heroes, like all the regular guys, you know, the Steve Gadd and the Vinnie Colaiutas and all those guys. I mean, such influences. But you know, like if you think about a Jeff Porcaro or a John Robinson and how these guys laid it down, I can remember listening to and learning Jeff Porcaro parts, you know, for cover bands and stuff, and being very, very specific about, you know, just every accent on the hi-hat, every open, every close, and really emulating that until it sort of becomes inside you, you know.